Hello, everyone. Hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Rachel Blaney, your Member of Parliament for North Island Powell River, and I want to thank you all for joining me and my special guest, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, for tonight's live and interactive telephone town hall discussion about affordability concerns. If you do have a question for Jagmeet or me, please press *3 on your phone at any time. Right now, we are calling thousands of your neighbors across our North Island Powell River riding. It will take a few minutes to connect with everyone, so as we're dialing out, let me take a moment to explain how a telephone town hall works. As I mentioned, right now, people across the riding are answering their phones and connecting to this discussion about affordability issues. It is in this way, it's like a traditional town hall where guests arrive and file in through the front door, except for the place where the front door is your phone ringing everywhere across the riding. Once someone answers their phone, they just stay on the line to join the discussion. This telephone town hall technology enables us to reach out and talk to thousands of people from the comfort of their homes. It's a great way for me as your MP to stay connected with you, listen, and answer your questions. For those of you just joining our telephone town hall on affordability issues, welcome. Again, this is Rachel Blaney, your Member of Parliament for North Island Powell River, and I see that we are still getting a few more calls underway, so we will wait for everyone to join in. I'd like to also welcome our special guest, NDP leader, Jagmeet Singh. Again, if you have a question for either of us, just press *3 on your phone at any time. So, looks amazing. Lots of people have joined us from across the riding, and there are still some more. So I just thought I would take this moment to ask our guest, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh, if he can share with us about the work that he and his team, including me, have been doing to address affordability issues. Jagmeet, to you.
Thanks so much, Rachel. First of all, we've been doing this all together as a team. We couldn't do this work without Rachel Blaney. She is just a force of nature for folks who know her, cares deeply about people on the island, never lets me forget about North Island Powell River, always raising the concerns of the community with me. So you got a champion fighting for you in Rachel. We've been noticing, obviously, the biggest concerns, cost of living is going up, and folks are telling us about that all the time, how groceries are more expensive than ever, rent is going up, mortgage is up, everything is so expensive. So one of the things that we identified is we noticed the price of groceries going up, but the grocery store companies, those large corporations, are making record profits. So we identified it's corporate greed that is driving up the cost of food. So we've taken that on head on. We brought Galen Weston, who's the CEO of Loblaws, and all the other CEOs to Parliament, asked some tough questions. I asked Galen Weston directly, how much profit is enough for you? You're making more money than you've ever made before. He had no answer. So we've taken them on directly with laws to take away their power, to protect consumers, to stop them from gouging people, from price fixing, and from other exploitation that they're engaged in. So that's one of the things we're doing directly, taking on the high price of groceries. We've seen that the Liberals they proposed that people should look at their flyers, grocery flyers, as a solution, which is ridiculous. They let food prices get out of control for 2 years, and then they did basically just acted like they cared with these really meaningless actions. And then we realized why the Conservatives have been really quiet on corporate greed. Well, it turns out the campaign manager for the Conservative Party of Canada, Jenny Byrne, is a registered lobbyist for Galen Weston's Loblaws. On top of that, they have received direct maximum donations from Galen Weston in the South. Their deputy leader, Melissa Landsman, was a lobbyist for Walmart. So these are folks that work for corporate grocery stores. They're not going to take them on. They're not going to take their bosses on. So we felt it's on us to take on the high price of groceries. On top of that, we've been fighting for dental care. It's going to save lots of money for seniors, help them protect their health. So make sure you're paying attention to your mailboxes, that you're getting enrolled. And if you need more help, of course, Rachel and our team will be there. We fought to get the GST rebate doubled 2 times. So that put more money in people's pockets. We fought to make sure that childcare funding, which is really helpful, is locked in, and we prioritize public and not-for-profit spaces. Lots more work needs to be done. We need to make sure people can have homes they can afford. We need to keep affordable homes, and we need to bring down the cost of rent. So we're working on a lot of things, but those are just some of the highlights of what we've been working on so far.
Well, thank you so much for that, Jagmeet. I know it's been a lot of work for us, and we know that people across the riding are really suffering, and I've heard that again and again. And I'm glad we're going to continue to work and fight this fight just to make life more affordable and really more fair. So just a reminder, everyone, if you do want to ask a question, just press *3 on your phone at any time. So I think we're ready to start to take some questions from tonight's telephone hall. So I'm going to move over and open the door for Ken to give us our first question of the night.
Well, hello, everybody. Yes, my name is Kent, and yes, questions are coming in. The first question is from Karen, and she's asking, tell us more about the dental rollout. What is the timeline, and what are you doing to address the issue for seniors who have insurance that they are already paying for, which is blocking them from the dental program?
Excellent question.
Rachel, I can take that question. Yeah.
Absolutely, Jagmeet.
I was going to say, unless you want to start off.
Well, I am the senior spokesperson, so absolutely I'm going to let you answer, Jagmeet, but I want to say that we've heard from a lot of seniors who are already paying for dental, retired, made sure that they had a plan that they were still paying into, and they're really uncertain about what to do next. And for some of them, it's like a $200 bill a month. So if they didn't have to pay that, it would mean a huge difference for them. So please tell us more.
Yes, absolutely. So as Rachel said, this is impacting seniors who took that initiative, who are really scrounging together that money, because these are folks that are not necessarily making a lot of money. These are folks that have just tried to find a way to get some coverage, knowing that it's going to be expensive to cover their dental care needs. So I raised this issue specifically with the Prime Minister last week, and I said, people that are paying out of pocket for private insurance and who otherwise qualify for the program should not have to continue to pay for this private insurance. So this is something I raised the issue is it's morally it's unfair, because some people took their proactive steps to try to get some insurance and otherwise qualify. They earn less than $90,000. They don't have coverage in terms of a pension coverage or a workplace coverage, and that's what we meant by previous coverage that's already locked in, not something optional that people have to spend out of pocket. So we are absolutely working on fixing this problem. It is really unfair. It has been raised with us, and we are working very quickly to get this resolved. And our hope is that those seniors that are on those private plans can basically drop those plans and get on the National Dental Care Program as soon as possible. That's what we're working towards, and we'll keep you posted. But that is the fair fix here. You should not have to pay out of pocket. You were exactly who we were thinking about when we were thinking about this program. I really appreciate the question, because I know many people are in this boat. We are going to fix this problem.
Well, thank you for that answer, Jagmeet. And I know already at our office, we're collecting a bit of a list of people that are in this particular situation, so that as information comes available, we're letting them know right away. So I'll give it back to Kent. What's our next question?
Yeah, and I just wanted to mention that one of the callers, Bev, had a very similar question about the dental insurance, indicating that she wouldn't be able to use the dental plan because of her, she's on a small income. So I think you've addressed that issue. So thank you for that. You've covered another question. There's a question here from Robert. Basically, why did you sign an agreement with the Liberals? This would be the confidence and supply agreement.
Awesome. Well, that's a great one for you, Jagmeet.
Yes, I'll take that on. Really good question. I ask myself the same question lots of times. Why do we even do this? In all seriousness, if you look back at New Democrats' history, ever since we've had power, whether it's Tommy Douglas or David Lewis or Jack Layton, anytime New Democrats have had power, we have been really focused on one thing only. How do we use our power to help people out? How do we make life easier? How do we reduce some of the burden on people? That is what we've always done. So if you look at any of the programs, whether it's universal health care, Tommy Douglas fought to bring that in that minority government. David Lewis fought to bring in changes to old age security and pensions. We were able to fight and get a lot of the social programs that we're so proud of as Canadians. When New Democrats had some power, well, that's what we used it for. So I was confronted with the same choice, and it's frustrating working with the Liberals. They're hard to work with. I don't like it, but I swallow that because I want to make sure we can make a difference in people's lives. And knowing that a family like Brienne's, who's a mom of 5 kids under 12, each one of her kids was able to see the dentist for the first time in their lives because of the program we fought for. And to see her, I remember hanging out with her and her kids at a park in Edmonton. I can still imagine the smiles on their faces, and her mom saying, Brienne saying, that her kids were actually healthier, that it turned out some of them had issues that she didn't know were related to their oral health. Well, their oldest had a rare disease that would never have been diagnosed but for the visit to the dentist, and they're all healthier now and are doing better in school, sleeping better, more energy, because we were able to get them that help. So to get that help for kids, and I'm so motivated that our seniors shouldn't have to worry about the cost of their dental care, worry about the pain that they experience and not being able to afford to fix it. So that was our motivation. How can we use our power to get people help? We saw the Liberals dragging their feet. They have so much power and they're not using it to help people. And we saw the Conservatives, what they want to do is cut. Their plan is really just to cut everything. Cut pensions, cut health care, cut EI, cut all the things that people need. And we thought, given those options, people really need us to fight for them, and that's what we did.
Well, thank you, Jagmeet. And I, of course, have to answer this question a lot in the riding as well. And I think it's really fair to say that none of this is easy. And that's the hard part about when you're given power, is that you really have to weigh every benefit against every cost. And I know for myself in our riding, 3 years ago, when Jack Harris had a motion in the House around dental care that both the Liberals and the Conservatives voted against, when we did a mailer out about it, we had so many people come and talk to us. And of course, 3 years ago, we were still in the middle of the high point of the pandemic. And I remember going to work and seeing people waiting outside the door just to bring me their piece of paper about their dental issues and tell me their story. So when I saw that passion and we were offered this opportunity and we put dental care at the heart of it, I just knew that so many of my constituents had come to me, had told me stories, really personal stories, parents with kids that they had to sometimes just get their teeth pulled as kids because they couldn't afford to take them to the dentist. Or, I met a senior who was literally blending food and drinking it through a straw. You carry that with you. And so when you have an opportunity to make somebody's life better, it's really hard not to take that opportunity, even if it means it's really hard for you. So I thank you, Jagmeet. I think you did a great job of explaining how important that is and how important it is for us to continue this work, because it really should be about people at the end of the day. So I will see what we have next. Kent, do you have another question for us?
Oh, I do.
Maybe before you go, Kent, can I just remind everybody, *3 is the best way to ask us a question. Go ahead, Kent.
Okay, Roderick asks a question about housing, saying investment companies are buying up rental properties and they're not maintaining them, and it also takes available housing off the market. What are your thoughts about that practice?
Wow, that is such an important question, and one that our caucus talks about a lot. I think what we're seeing again is the commercialization of housing. And at the end of the day, the market will never decide to build housing that is affordable for people, that really allows a bar of dignity for people as they age, if they're in a vulnerable situation. And so that really concerns me, is that we are seeing those things happen. And it's really a financialization where it's getting so hard to get into the market now, even to find anything affordable to rent, that basic human rights are being ignored, and we're seeing the impact on our communities. I know for us in rural and remote communities, it's only in the last little while that people are starting to pay attention, which I think is really unfortunate. When I was elected in 2015, already I was hearing warning signs from the housing organizations across our riding. A lot of them talked about not enough affordable housing. They talked about seeing seniors struggling and going into being unhoused, couch surfing. Seniors, they'd never seen that. These are people that have been working with unhoused people for like 20 years. We're seeing different demographics enter that field that they'd never seen before. So I am going to pass this on to Jagmeet, but I have tabled more than once a right to housing bill. And I fundamentally believe in it because one of the challenges is there's no accountability at a federal level of looking at how housing is doing across the country. And if you look at our stats, for the last 35 years, we've seen two things happening at the same time. One, way less investment from the federal government and most provincial governments in affordable housing, and less investment in people buying housing that is affordable to rent. And when you see those two things and that sort of downturn for the last 35 years, we are in a crisis now because slowly over 35 years, housing has just been undermined, and now we have to make huge investments, which we believe in as the NDP, to really build that bar of dignity and get people houses. I'll leave the rest to you, Jagmeet.
Thanks so much, Rachel. Well, we're noticing a clear trend here. A clear trend, if you look at the inflation that we're going through, people are hurting. It's harder than ever to rent. It's harder than ever to pay your mortgage. It's harder than ever to buy your groceries. Let's look at all those other who it's not hard for. Grocery stores, those CEOs are making record profits, more money than they've ever made. Banks making record profits. Insurance companies making record profits. The questioner raised the issue of corporate landlords. Again, they're making record profits. So inflation that we're going through is hitting people differently. Working families, everyday folks are feeling the pain. Those at the top, corporate CEOs, large corporations, are actually making record profits. Oil and gas companies, they've literally made more money than they've ever made as well in their history. Record corporate profits and record pain that people are going through. So that is why we've made it very clear. It's the only way we can take on the challenge that we're up against right now is we've got to take on corporate greed. Corporate greed when it comes to grocery prices, corporate greed in the housing market. The housing market is not broken. It's working exactly the way it was intended. It makes rich investors richer. It makes developers lots of money, but it doesn't build homes that people can afford. That's the way it's been designed by liberals and conservatives, and we got to change that. The housing market should work for people, and it's a matter of the choices we make. It's a matter of the policies that are passed that decide how the housing market works. So right now, large corporate landlords are sweeping up homes and apartments across the country, and that's going to mean less affordability. Under the liberals and conservatives, actually this is an important point. Pierre Poilievre talks a lot about how important housing is. When he was in power under the Harper government, they sold off 800,000 affordable homes across the country. They sold them off to rich corporate landlords, and they were no longer affordable. Under the Liberals, 200,000 were also similarly sold off. So 1 million affordable homes across this country would have been there if these folks didn't sell them off to corporate landlords. That's why we've been saying we've got to build affordable homes. We've got to keep what is affordable, keep it affordable. So Rachel's bang on. This should be something that we work on together, but it's clear that neither the Liberals or Conservatives are going to do it.
Well, it is clear. And what's interesting, of course, is a lot of people in the real estate group, maybe not the big top billionaires, but just everyday real estate folks have said, we can't fill this gap. This isn't going to come through this. We really need the government to step up. And I think that you hit it right on the head there. We need to see less buying up of affordable housing units and more built. We cannot be giving this away. It just creates such a disparity. And I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's heartbreaking. You know, I think of a constituent that came to visit our office just over a month ago who lived for 40 years in his trailer at a trailer park in one of our communities. And the trailer park was sold, and he was told that he had to leave. And he was like, where am I going to go? And so we did all we could to try to find somewhere for him to go. But I was thinking, this gentleman's in his 70s. He's lived in this place for 40 years. Where is he going to go? And there's just too many people struggling in that way, and it scares me. And I think they have to be held accountable, and we're doing that work every single day. So, Kent, back to you.
All right, thank you. Teresa has a question, I guess following a bit on the larger corporations theme that you were talking about. What is the NDP doing about bigger corporations buying small companies and creating monopolies?
Wow, this is excellent questions for my constituents tonight, Jagmeet.
I know. I'm so
really
impressed,
proud.
Rachel.
I'm so impressed with them, and I really appreciate how they're seeing so clearly the unfairness of our system. And I think it's really important to just remind people it doesn't have to be this way. We literally elect people to make decisions, and we're seeing too many people who are elected that are really letting those very ultra wealthy people in the top 1%, money that most of us will never even be able to consider in our lifetime, giving that power to them and allowing them to rule the systems and our country instead of honoring people and keeping things affordable. So I give it to you, Jagmeet.
Well, we actually have a bill on this. My bill that recently passed last week directly touches on mergers and monopolies. And the questioner is so bang on. If you look at a number of areas, if you look at telecommunications, so our internet and our cell phone, there is a significant, I guess it's an oligopoly because it's three, but Bell, Telus, and Rogers basically run the telecommunications market in our country. And we pay some of the highest cell phone fees as well as internet fees in the world. And now people say, oh, Canada is a very large country and spread out. There are other countries that are very similar, Finland, Sweden. Similarly, there's a couple of major cities, but the rest is very sparse and spread out. They have far lower costs for their internet and for their cell services. So that is not a good excuse. So these oligopolies are absolutely ripping us off. And the problem is we don't have strong enough rules that prevent these mergers from happening. So recently, Rogers and Shaw had a big merger. That merger should never have been allowed to happen. In fact, the Competition Bureau, which is it's an organization that determines, is this good for people, bad for people, good for consumers, will it hurt consumers? They made a ruling, they made a finding that this merger would have been bad, that it's going to mean higher prices, less options. But they did not have the mandate or the power to stop the deal, and then the Liberals approved it and let it go ahead. So Rogers and Shaw merged, which again, less choices, less options for people. What we put in my bill, which has passed the first stage, and we want to fight to make sure it becomes the law of the land, it would automatically deem illegal any merger that results in a company having more than 35% of the market or more than 30% of the market share. So if a company can merge and they'll have more than 30% of the share of whatever department it is, whatever area it is, that will be deemed illegal unless the company could prove conclusively that it would be good for competition, which is a very hard threshold for them to make. It's very difficult to show that it would be good for consumers and good for competition if two companies join together. And the law that I proposed that passed recently, the first stage of it at least, it's not the law of the land yet, but the first stage passed. We said if it's over 60% and higher, it's just deemed illegal. It cannot happen. No exemptions, no exceptions, no proof would ever change that over. So that's a way to protect us from mergers in the future. But we are up against mergers that have already happened now, and that's why a part of that bill that I put forward is going to crack down on some of the abuse. And one of the things that happens is when a company has like a dominant market share, so they have more than 40% of the market, more than 30, like the grocery stores, those three combined, Loblaw, Sobeys, Metro, own more than 60, 70% of the grocery market. They abuse their position, their dominant market share. They abuse it, and they do things like they fix the prices. They did that with bread. Folks will recall bread price fixing happened with big grocery stores and big bread producers, but there was very minimal sanctions. If you think about it, they found that the benefit that was accrued by all the partners, so all the grocery stores, the big bread producers, was about $5 billion in money that basically ripped off of Canadians. But the fine, so Canada Bread got about $50 million fine. Loblaws, which cooperated, so they got a lighter fine, got about $9 or $10 million. If you think about it, collectively they earned, or they ripped off Canadians to the tune of $5 billion, but they only got a handful of $1 million of fines. That's like the cost of doing business. That's not going to deter them from the future. Our penalties that we put in the bill would mean if they engage in that type of behavior, the judge would have the option of choosing the highest of the following: a $25 million, 3 times triple the benefit accrued. So in the case of the bread price fixing, $5 billion was the amount that they made. Then the fine that could be levied collectively would have been $15 billion. Now we're talking severe and heavy sanctions that would very much deter them from doing that type of thing in the future. And that money could be then reused to help people get a break when it comes to buying their groceries or buying the things that they need. So there are ways to take this on, to take on the mergers, to take on the corporate greed, to take on the abuse and the exploitation that they're engaged in. And that recently, by chance, we've got a bill that we just proposed and passed, it's called second reading, on this very question.
Well, not by chance, Jagmeet. I know this is something you're really passionate about, is making sure that there's more fairness in our system. And I think it is really important on so many levels. It's also about the fact that so many times when mergers happen, so many workers lose their jobs. And if you look around our country, there's just too much instability. And it's really, like you said, taking away competition so that people treat us better as corporations. And we've got to make them more accountable. So I really appreciate the work that you've done on that bill and your leadership in this, to just say this can be different. We can have a system that allows people to prosper, allows businesses to be strong, but holds them to account so they're not cheating everyday hardworking Canadians. So, Kent, do you have any other questions for us? We're halfway through, everyone. So just remember, if something's coming to mind, press *3 and ask a question, and we will do our best to get to it.
Okay, yes. Okay, we've just on the theme of groceries and such, there have been a few questions that have come in along that line, really highlighting, asking about the high cost of groceries right here in our riding in Powell River and elsewhere in the riding here. One specific question is about self-checkouts, and that they're cutting into the number of jobs within supermarkets and such. And the comment is, this is wrong and saving money. What are you doing about job security for workers in these positions?
Well, that is an excellent question. And I know I've seen those self-checkouts increase everywhere. And I also know that I've stood by the cashiers waiting a few times for a cashier to show up, just because I don't like doing those self-checkouts. I think, it's really concerning. And of course, we always hear that it's not going to take away the jobs, but it just doesn't make any sense how it couldn't. So I think Jagmeet's bill did talk about this, so I will pass it over to him. But really, at the end of the day, it's about starting to hold these corporations to account and looking at their profit margins and making sure that they're paying their fair share. Because you're right, people do need the jobs, and especially in small communities like ours that have a long history of resource-based jobs that are boom and bust sometimes, we really need to be diversifying the things that we do so that we have more stability. And definitely those hardworking people at grocery stores need to be respected as well. And I just want to remind everyone that Galen Weston got a huge bonus, a huge increase in his wage. And at the same time that he got that increase, we didn't see anything for the frontline workers who are dealing with things that are a lot more stressful than they were even 5 years ago. Jagmeet, I'll leave it over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Rachel, and thanks. This is a team effort. Rachel and I work together on these issues. We're fight together because we are a party founded by workers, by everyday people that said we're up against this powerful corporate greed. We're up against these rich CEOs. What do? Well, the power of the people is incredible, and when we come together, we can make incredible things happen. So to this point, we actually, another bill that I proposed earlier, I believe it was last year, was on something that Bernie Sanders proposed in the States, and it is to look at what the CEO compensation is in a company. And so Rachel mentioned Galen Weston. He makes over 400 times what the average or the median income of a worker in his company, 400 times. So we put forward an idea similar to what Bernie Sanders did, which is if a corporation is going to give their CEO such massive pay inequity, so they're going to pay them so much more than what they pay their workers, then they're going to have to pay a higher corporate tax rate. And if they pay their workers a fair wage, if they increase the wage of the workers, then they'll pay less corporate taxes. So that's a way to incentivize higher wages for workers And if they're going to have inequality, then they're going to have to pay for that inequality. They're going to have to pay higher taxes, which we can then use that revenue to give back to people, to reinvest into programs for people. The other thing, and Rachel has always been a big proponent of this, one of the other ways we can balance the sometimes very unequal playing field is by giving workers more power, and that is by supporting unions. Those workers, often many of them at grocery stores, don't earn enough to eat or to shop at the grocery stores that they work at, which is just so fundamentally wrong. So the more we can support unions to have the power to fight for better wages for their workers, the more we can support them to have the laws that protect their ability to defend workers, the better they'll be able to get for those fair wages. So really, it's about fairness, and the companies themselves are going to find ways to get rid of the workers and cut corners and make more profit, even if it means less jobs. And we need to fight to support working people so that they can get benefits. Whatever the sector is, every sector has to have this as a priority, that we will encourage any area where there's jobs being created, that those jobs are for working people, that they create good jobs for everyday people. And it's not about the CEOs making record profits, but it's about workers getting good benefits and workers earning good salaries.
Well, thank you for that, Jagmeet. And I know that in our riding, I've stood on several picket lines over the last over 8 years. And, I hear all the time about people working together in unions to fight to keep those jobs and to fight to keep, them in our community. So I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I think it's another way of us reminding everyone that we are right now in the process of having anti-scab legislation brought into the House and moved through the system. Because what is terrible is when people take their power in a union and they walk off the job to fight for their right to be treated better, to be paid better, and then other people get hired to do their work for them, really undermining their power. So I'm really excited about anti-scab legislation. I think that will also help encourage other work environments to become unionized if they know that their ability to have power collectively is going to make such a big difference. And unfortunately, if we don't have rules in place, we cannot trust people to be as good as we would like them to be. And corporations really, it feels like the big corporations, I'm not talking about little corporations in our communities that are always there whenever the community is in need, but those big ones, they forget their humanity. And we can't have that happening. So that's why, like the work you're doing, Jagmeet, is really about fighting to make sure that those rules are in place so that accountability is higher, which means better treatment for everyday Canadians. So Kent, I will pass it over to you for the next question.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I see there are a few questions dealing with affordable housing in particular. One comment from Diane is the dire need for more affordable housing in our riding. Another point is Chloe mentioned that in Powell River there's an explosion of purchase prices, and is asking the question of how Jagmeet and the NDP is planning to work with the provincial premier to make costs of housing affordable again. So I'll turn that over to you.
Well, sure, and I'm happy to pass that on to Jagmeet. I can say, I remember a few years back being at a housing announcement in one of the communities, and the provincial government announced their multi-million dollars that they were investing, and then Canada stood up and talked about the $300,000 that they were investing. So what we've heard really clearly from the affordable housing community is that the federal government is not stepping up as a really meaningful partner. And so I appreciate what the British Columbia government is doing, but if they don't have a federal government that's stepping up and really putting some resources into it, the reality is we're going to continue struggling. And during the pandemic, we saw, especially in some of our very small communities, the housing costs exploded because so many people learned that they could live and work remotely, and they wanted to move into our communities because they're beautiful places to live. But it really undermined the amount of housing that we have. And now we're in a crisis point, all the way from Cortez to Powell River. to Campbell River, Comox, Port Hardy. It's just astonishing, the housing needs that we have. So I'll leave it to Jagmeet to talk a little bit about what our vision is moving forward for housing that is really going to meet the needs of people. And then I'll finish it up when you're done. Jagmeet?
Sounds great. Yeah. Rachel has shared with me a lot of stories. She touched about the one about someone that was living in a trailer for a long time, and then that housing was no longer available. Just the sheer need. People who've got decent incomes but have nowhere to go because there's no vacancy. I know this is an issue, Rachel, you brought up with me a lot in North Island, Powell River, that there's no vacancy. People are starting to live in their vans, living in their cars. And these are folks that have jobs, have full-time jobs in many cases. So how is it in a country as rich as ours, people with a full-time job can't find a place to live? It's just simply, it's wrong. Like, it should not be happening. And that goes back to what we were talking about, this idea of how the housing market's been designed. It's been designed to make rich investors rich. But then we look at some of the solutions, and Rachel is bang on. She says that while the BC government is doing a lot, they're really making this a priority. It's clear that they care. They're clear that they're trying. They don't have a federal partner at the same level. And the other thing is, and this is the thing that bothers me the most, and I get to see Justin Trudeau and the Liberals up close, and I see how much power they have to fix these problems. And what they choose to do, often they ignore. Often they're so out of touch, they just don't understand how serious things are. And I don't think they've ever really lived that, or even know people who have lived what it's like to not know if you're going to have a home, if you're going to lose your place right now, and how scary that feels and how vulnerable that makes you. So what they're doing, an idea that we talked about, which is a very good idea, we should use federal land. There's lots of federal land. The federal government's got power, it's got the land. Let's use it and build homes for people. Well, the Liberals, they announced that they're doing that. They're using federal land. Great, that sounds exciting. Except then we looked a bit deeper and we said, okay, what type of homes are they building on this federal land? Well, we looked at one project in Alberta, and only 13% of the homes being built on this federal land were affordable. So we said, wait a second, so you're saying that the vast majority of the homes being built on our public federal land will not be affordable, could be luxury homes or luxury condos? That's not going to solve the housing crisis. And that's my real critique for both Justin Trudeau and Pierre Poilievre. They think that private development will fix this. They think, just build a whole bunch more private homes. Now, of course, we need to be building all sorts of homes. Private development is a part of it. But if we just built a bunch of luxury homes and luxury condos, that is not going to build affordable homes. Rachel says this again and again. It's about affordability. And we always say we need to build affordable homes. So our plan is this. We need to build homes specifically that are affordable. We use our federal land to only and strictly build homes that meet the definition of affordability. Nothing else should be built on our public land. There's lots of other opportunities for private developers to make private luxury condos, luxury homes. They can do that. But on public land, it should be strictly affordable homes. We also need to look at other options like cooperatives as a real affordable option for people with the stability to know you're never going to get kicked out of a cooperative. We also need to look at not-for-profit housing as another alternative. The final thing is something that the BC NDP government's done is an acquisition fund so that we can keep the homes that are affordable. Earlier, someone mentioned that corporate landlords are scooping out homes at a record rate. They are actually. They're really looking at the housing market in Canada and saying this is a gold mine, and they're buying up apartments, they're buying up apartment buildings, they're buying up homes, and those homes are no longer then affordable. So we need a fund that keeps those homes affordable, helps some apartments be converted into cooperatives. There was a fund like that in the past, and many apartment buildings converted into cooperatives and were turned into very affordable homes. So there are so many options and solutions on the table. We actually have a number of countries in the world that have figured this out. We were able to spend some time with the Social Democrats in Germany, and they have an incredible affordability in Berlin, the major city, capital city, where you can find apartments for rent for a working person, for a young person in the heart of the city for $500 a month, that equivalent kind of rent. That is the type of deep affordability that we need in Canada, and sadly is not here right now, but we can turn that around. And I want to give people hope. It's all about the choices we make. We can absolutely make better choices to turn this around, to build more affordable homes, to keep homes that are affordable in the hands of the public or not-for-profit groups to keep them truly affordable for families.
Well, absolutely. And I know that when we talk about affordability, a lot of people ask, what do you mean by affordable housing? And I always tell them, our vision is 30% or less of your income. We know that if it's over that percentage, it just means you can't get by, especially in these times of rising house costs. It's also been very concerning for me as a seniors critic just to see how many seniors are really becoming unhoused. And another cohort of seniors that are really struggling that I've heard from, not only in the riding, but quite frankly across the country, are seniors who consider themselves house rich, but financially poor. So they may have bought a house big for their family, and as their family grew up and left, they're in their homes still, and they have money and equity in their homes, but there's nowhere for them to buy something that is better for them. And, you know, it's kind of sad to hear some of those stories of seniors who are, you know, fairly fragile, who are living in the downstairs. I spoke with one woman who hadn't been upstairs. Her kitchen was upstairs. She hadn't been upstairs in a couple of years because she just couldn't go up the stairs. But she couldn't find anything to buy so that she could sell that would actually house her. So she's sort of locked into her house. So, you know, I think there's got to be a lot of work done around working with seniors, with young people, with people living with disabilities to really find out what their needs are. So that really means working with community. And one of the things that has been very concerning to me that I've heard a lot of municipal politicians talk to me about, especially in our riding, is how the Conservatives are attacking municipalities for not solving this problem. And I think it's really unfair for the Conservatives to attack, you know, small municipalities that may not have the resources in any way to deal with this huge crisis that's overtaking them. So it's been really disappointing to see that. So I agree. We need to see more support for nonprofits, really looking at how to make that housing more affordable and not allowing corporations to decide. Because I know, Jagmeet, you've done a lot of work on this, where corporations have looked at the market within the community that they're in and said, yeah, we'll build market housing, but it's not non-market housing. So it's really, you know, building housing. They're getting funds from the federal government to build these houses or these apartment buildings or these condos, and none of them are affordable because of how they've defined it and how the federal government, in this case, the Liberal government, has allowed them to get away with that. So, Kent, do you have another question for us? We're about 15 minutes from being done, everyone. So if you have a question, please press *3, and we'll try to get to it as soon as we can.
Yeah, there are two questions here that are further on housing, and they're related to each other. So I'm going to kind of combine them. They're from Karen and Crystal, and they're about cooperative housing. And so Karen is making the point that she'd like to know what your thoughts are on what can be done to regain the fact that CMHC used to support cooperative housing in the past, but not so much anymore. And Crystal is making the comment that the NDP and Jagmeet are championing cooperative housing in 2019, and this would be a great move forward. What's happening nowadays with cooperative housing and the NDP stand on it?
Well, thank you so much for that question. And I think it's a really important one because, of course, we know that cooperative housing has a beautiful history in our country of really allowing communities to be enriched by having people living together with multiple income levels. And I really love co-op housing. I never lived in it myself, but I've met with a lot of people who have shared history of growing up in that environment. And I think it's really important. And one of the reasons that I think it's really important is because when we isolate people based on their economic reality, it does create an environment that is really exclusive instead of inclusive. So I really believe in co-op housing. I know a lot of people have come to me to talk about this, and it used to be absolutely right. CMHC used to invest in co-op housing. They saw this as a way to build community and to make sure that housing was affordable. And we've seen over the last 35, 40 years a huge decrease In fact, we know that CMHC used to invest about a lot of money into 15,000 units across Canada every year. So when they stopped doing that, part of the reason we're in the crisis that we're in is because they stopped making those investments. And now here we are holding the bag, and everyday people holding the bag and suffering greatly just because that meaningful investment was not being made. So I'll turn it over to you, Jagmeet. What are your thoughts on co-op housing, and where does the party stand on that issue?
Well, I think Rachel just answered all of that question. I don't think there's anything more to add beyond the fact that we absolutely believe in it. It has to be part of the solution. And as Rachel said, the questioner is bang on that the CMHC used to invest in it and it stopped. And that is definitely, as Rachel said, a part of why we're where we are. You can look at the graph of affordability when homes were affordable and when they started taking a big veer on the graph into the territory of not affordable was around the 90s when that big investment in housing stopped. And then for those decades since, it's just gotten worse and worse and worse in a really accelerated way. So we absolutely believe in it. We are going to push as hard as we can. We recently were able to secure, as a part of our agreement, special funding specifically for cooperative homes where the GST would be waived on builds that are cooperative. So it's another way to incentivize and encourage building of cooperative homes. So we're working on it. We believe in it, and it is a top priority for us.
Well, thank you. And it is something I'm really proud of that we got that added and the GST removed, because we do need to find ways to incentivize these projects so that we can see them. And I think that our smaller communities have a lot of energy and innovation. What we need is the resources to get it done. And I know I keep harping about seniors, but what's been devastating for me is seeing, younger, healthier seniors retire, find out that they are at a bigger center, they can't afford to live, they're moving to some of our smaller centers. And at the same time that they're moving, older people with fragile health are having to move to the bigger centers. And we're seeing this across Canada, and they lose all of their social connections, all the people that just help out, and their health outcomes for both sides actually go down dramatically. So when people are in a community, we have to do all we can to keep them there as long as possible. And that means having more housing, more cooperatives, and really looking at what our communities need. Next question for us, Kent.
Okay, yeah. Switching gears to a topic that hasn't been covered yet tonight. This is from Mary Jane. Jagmeet has said that the deal will end, this is the deal with the Liberals, if the next steps for pharmacare are not taken by March the 1st. Is this true? If so, will it take away our dental program?
That's a really important question. I know that a lot of people have been asking me about pharmacare as the next step in our agreement. So, Jagmeet, I'll leave this to you.
Yeah, this is a tough one because we've been really clear. And I had a meeting with the Prime Minister last week where I said, you've been dragging your feet on this. Liberals have promised pharmacare for 30 years. 1997 is when they first promised it. And they have broken that promise year after year. And the Liberals themselves, Justin Trudeau himself, ran on it in 2019 and didn't move forward with it. So it's something we fought for. It's something that we require them to do. And I've said if they break that part of the agreement, the agreement is broken. So we're not going to be beholden to it. So we're in this point now where the ball is in the Liberals' court. We've said where we stand. We want a program that's good for people, good for workers. They want to appease the big pharmaceutical industry. And we disagree with that. We don't think the job of government is to appease those large corporate interests. The job of government should be to defend people, to defend working people, to defend families, people that are vulnerable. That's the job of government. When it comes to the other things, this is a really serious question, and I want to take it seriously. We are going to fight. What we've said is that the agreement won't be there, so we'll go vote to vote. But that doesn't mean we can't continue to put pressure to deliver on the dental care. It's already out the door for hundreds of thousands of seniors have already enrolled, and we're going to keep that going. By this summer, it should be about 4 million Canadians that get it. And then if we can continue to keep the pressure going, the final phase, phase 3, will be an additional 5 million Canadians that get the program, which will get up to about 9 million Canadians, and we're about 39 million, 38 million. So this will be about 1 in 4 person in our country will be getting dental care because of us when it's all said and done. So we're not saying that it's going to be an immediate trigger in election, but there'll be consequences if the Liberals break the agreement. And we're saying that they would be breaking it because they're breaking their commitment to us. And we'll go vote to vote, and we'll continue to fight to get things like the anti-scab legislation Rachel mentioned and the dental care. We'll continue to fight to get those things moving. But the agreement, if the Liberals break it, then it will be broken.
I mean, these are really hard realities that we're facing as we move through this. But I agree. You know, I've talked to so many people. I remember having a chat with a woman who had just been diagnosed with diabetes, and the medication costs were about $250 a month that she did not have, and she didn't know what she was going to do. So what she did is she didn't treat her diabetes. And we all know that the health outcomes for that are significant. I've spoken to seniors who cut pills in half because they're trying to stretch it out to make it last longer, and, you know, people with different illnesses that can't afford it. And I think that, you know, when we look at that, there's just too many people falling through the gaps. And we know that if we have pharmacare, then that means collective buying. And right now, every province and territory is shopping on their own, which means the costs are going to be higher. And we're the third highest of the world in terms of pharmaceutical costs. And I think that's just terrible. And it isn't what we want. You know, when I think of Tommy Douglas and the work that he did, he dreamt of this. You know, it was the first step to get Medicare, and the second step was to get pharmacare. And it would be a beautiful thing to see this country take that step and really honor that legacy. And when I look at it, you know, I've met with so many seniors who are now getting dental care, and talk to families whose children are getting dental care in some cases for the first time. Every time I have those conversations, it really moves me and makes me feel like every hard day that we've ever had is worth those millions of people getting the help that they so desperately need. So, Kent, I hope we have one last question, and then I'll wrap it up.
Yeah, there's a question here from Terry, and Terry's asking, how is Jagmeet and the NDP going to deal with Pierre Poilievre in the next election, who claims that he represents workers?
That is a good question, and I'll hand it right over to Jagmeet. Oh, have we lost you, Jagmeet? I know your kids were with you. Maybe
Sorry,
they
I was on mute there. That's pretty embarrassing. It's a very Zoom moment where I was like, I left it on mute. This is probably one of the biggest questions of the next election. And I want to answer this question by telling folks that I know, Rachel and I know Pierre Poilievre very well. We know what he's all about. And we see him in Parliament, and we see what he does every day. And what he does is use his power to push for things that are going to hurt people. Here's one, I think, one of the most stark examples that really describes who he is. And I think more and more people need to know this about him, that he is presenting himself as the solution, but he is going to create even bigger problems. And here's just one really concrete example. You've heard him talk about grocery prices and say, oh, the grocery prices are so high. Well, there was a vote in Parliament just a month ago, right before the winter break, so maybe a month and a half ago. And the vote was to put in place a school lunch program. This is something economists said is non-inflationary. It would help kids have a nutritious meal at school. It would help their parents who are struggling with the high cost of groceries. It would help them not have to worry if their kids are going to get a good meal or not. And he very callously voted against this program. That makes no sense at all. It's non-inflationary. It would help kids get a healthy meal. And if he really was serious about the struggles that people are going through when it comes to cost of groceries, then why would he vote against it? And it really shows you who he is. He voted against dental care for seniors. When you think about this, he has had free or taxpayer-funded dental care for basically all of his adult life. Yet he would deny it to seniors. The exact same thing. He has received taxpayer-funded dental care since his mid-20s, but he would deny it for not just himself, but his entire family. And we don't begrudge him that, but I begrudge him the fact that he would deny that to seniors. He would deny that to children. That is who he is. And we see the Conservatives, they often, when they get in power, or always, they cut the services that people need and it hurts them. They always end up helping their powerful friends. They give money away to rich corporations and they hurt people. And that's who Pierre Poilievre is. And we've identified, when we went through, we talked about what are the major challenges we're up against. Well, the corporate greed in grocery stores, corporate landlords buying up all the housing. We see the corporate greed in banks and big insurance companies. We've seen again and again that the major problem in affordability, whether it's housing or groceries, is corporate greed, corporate landlords, large corporate grocery stores. He is not going to go after the problems that people are up against. He's not going to go after those large corporations because he works for them. His team works for them. His campaign manager is a lobbyist for Loblaws. So I would say I'm going to make the case to Canadians that for the problems that we're up against, the challenges that we're faced with, the Conservatives are not the answer. They're not the solution. They're just going to make the problem worse.
Well, I appreciate that answer, and I appreciate as well being on your team, Jagmeet. It means a lot. And I really appreciate your commitment to people and to fairness. And I think that really government is there to make sure that as a collective we can find ways to always do better and to really make sure there's a bar of dignity in our country that we can all be proud of. And I believe that you're exactly the kind of leader that will get us there. So, folks, I want to respect your time. It's getting to be 7 o'clock, and I know you're really busy. Thank you for taking the time to spend with us today, to share with us all of your questions. We really appreciate everyone who joined the call, whether you asked a question or just stayed to listen. If there's anything outstanding that you wanted more information, please don't hesitate to call my office or send us an email at rachel.blaney@parl.gc.ca. And the phone number is 250-287-9388. We would love to hear from you. So Jagmeet and I are working really hard and fighting really hard to make a difference in the lives of the people who are in our communities. And I really appreciate all of you taking the time. So thank you, and I wish you all the very best this evening. Take care, everyone.